For 27 years, Samuel Brooks had kept the light burning in Greyhaven Lighthouse. It was a promise he made, not just to the sailors at sea, but to himself. He hadn't missed a single night knot, through thunder, nor the dense, curling fog, nor through the long, quiet years after his wife, Martha, passed away. The townsfolk whispered that he talked to the sea, and maybe he did. After all, it was the only thing that seemed to listen. His only other companion was Finn, a loyal border collie whose brown and white coat was always dusted with sea salt. One night, in October of 1941, the world felt like it was holding its breath, and the Atlantic decided to exhale. A monstrous storm rolled in, a churning wall of black water and howling wind. As the gale rattled the very bones of the lighthouse, Samuel saw a small fishing boat, tossed on the waves like a child's forgotten toy. Its lantern flickered weakly, a dying heartbeat in the chaos. Without a second thought, he grabbed his heavy coat and raced down the spiral stairs, the wind tearing at him as he rang the massive warning bell. He shouted into the storm, his voice raw, calling for his friend, Captain Morris, who was already out in the tempest, searching for lost lobster traps. Together, using the powerful, sweeping beam of the lighthouse, they guided the desperate vessel, inch by agonizing inch, until it finally scraped against the safety of the shore. And among the drenched, shivering survivors was a small girl, no older than 11, clutching a worn violin case as if it were the only anchor she had left in the world. Her name was Leela. She was an evacuee from Boston, sent to the coast with relatives as part of a refuge program, a small attempt to find safety as the drums of war grew louder. But their transport boat had capsized in the sudden storm. Samuel brought her back to the warmth of the lighthouse, a stone fortress against the raging sea. He built a roaring fire in the hearth, gave her a thick wool blanket, and set a bowl of warm milk and a slice of bread on the small wooden table. She ate in silence, her eyes wide with a fear that seemed too big for her small frame. When she finally spoke, her voice was a trembling whisper. "Are we safe now?" Samuel looked at her, his weathered face softening. He nodded slowly. "As long as this light is burning," he said, his voice a low rumble, "no ship will lose its way." The storm outside eventually passed, leaving behind a sky washed clean and a calm sea. But the girl had nowhere to go. The authorities, their hands full preparing the nation for a war that seemed inevitable, had no immediate answers. So Samuel let her stay. It was a simple decision, made without hesitation. She became his shadow. Leela followed him everywhere up the dizzying spiral stairs to the lantern room, where she'd help him polish the enormous glass lens until it sparkled. She'd trailed him across the windy cliffs, with Finn bounding ahead, a joyful blur of fur and energy. She was quiet, but her presence filled the empty spaces of the lighthouse. Sometimes, she would hum softly to herself while she worked. Other times, she'd take out her violin. The music she played was melancholic, yet hopeful, a melody that drifted out from the tower and over the waves. Samuel hadn't heard music in the lighthouse since his wife died. It was a sound he thought he'd lost forever. But now, with Lila's tunes weaving through the salty air, the old stone tower felt alive again. It felt like a home. One crisp morning, a letter arrived. It wasn't a friendly note from town or a bill for supplies. This one was different. It bore the official, unforgiving seal of the United States Navy. Samuel's hands, usually so steady, trembled as he broke the wax. The words were stark, official, and final. Greyhaven Lighthouse was to be decommissioned, effective immediately. The Navy, fearing that coastal lights could guide enemy submarines, wanted the entire eastern seaboard to go dark, a strategic blackout. Samuel read the lines again and again, the words blurring. "They can," he whispered to Finn, who nudged his hand, sensing his distress. "Not this coast. It's too treacherous." But orders were orders. On December 10th, 1941, just 3 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor plunged, the nation into war. The light at Greyhaven went out for the first time in nearly 3 decades. That night, the sea turned into a vast, featureless expanse of black. The town fell into an unnerving silence, as if the world itself had lost its voice. Weeks crawled by in darkness. A brutal blizzard hit the coast, a tempest of snow and ice that seemed to swallow what little light the winter sun offered. Inside the lighthouse, Samuel, Lila, and Finn huddled by the cast-iron stove, the only source of warmth against the biting cold. Through the relentless howl of the wind, Lila suddenly sat up, her head tilted. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Samuel strained his ears, pressing his face against the icy window pane. And then he heard it too, a faint, rhythmic tapping, carried on the wind. Tap, 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 tap. It was Morse code. Desperate. Faint. Sos. Somewhere out in that blinding storm, a transport ship, full of soldiers, had lost its bearings. Samuel's gaze shot to the dark, silent tower above them. The Navy's order, the threat of court-martial, echoed in his head. Then he looked down at Lila, her small face illuminated by the firelight, her violin resting beside her. He saw her trust, her hope, and in that moment, he made his choice. He grabbed a box of matches and began to climb. "Let him court-martial me," he muttered, his heart pounding against his ribs with every step up the spiral stairs. "I won't let them die." He reached the lantern, struck a match, and the magnificent beam blazed back to life, cutting a defiant path through the swirling snow. By dawn, the blizzard had broken. The sky was a pale, bruised gray, and there, safely anchored in the shelter of the bay, was the transport ship. Its crew, visible on the deck, were waving, their figures small, but their gratitude immense. It wasn't long before a jeep carrying Navy officers arrived. Samuel stood tall, expecting to be arrested, to be led away in disgrace. Instead, the commanding officer approached, stopped before him, and raised his hand in a crisp salute. "Mr. Brooks," the commander said, his voice filled with respect, "if you hadn't relit that lamp, every man aboard that ship would have been lost." Samuel managed a faint smile, the weight of the night lifting from his shoulders. "Then I'll take the blame gladly, sir." That spring, Greyhaven Lighthouse was officially reinstated for active service. Leela stayed on through the war, her music a comfort to the soldiers who passed through, her hands busy writing letters home for those who could not. When peace finally came, she left to study music in New York, but she never forgot. Every year, she returned to the Maine coast, to play her violin beneath the sweeping beam of light. And many years later, when Samuel finally passed, it was Leela who took his place, becoming the new keeper, lighting the lamp each dusk just as he had taught her. Today, visitors to that rugged coast still tell stories. They speak of a woman standing in the lantern room, her violin music floating over the waves, and the happy bark of a dog carried on the wind. And beneath the lighthouse door, a simple brass plaque reads, "For Samuel Brooks who kept the light alive when the world went dark." Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing for more tales of courage and hope.